The road into Willow Creek curved like a ribbon dropped by a careless hand. Pines lined both sides, dark and tall, the kind that kept their whispers even at noon. I drove with the windows cracked to let the air in, cooler than the city, scented with rain and something green enough to make my shoulders unclench. After 2 hours of highways and podcasts I barely heard, the town sign appeared, hand-painted, "Welcome to Willow Creek, where the river sings." Under it, someone had stuck a smiley face sticker that the sun had bleached to a ghost. I was 23, a journalism grad with a second-hand hatchback, 3 plants that refused to die, and a job offer that was more promise than paycheck, stringer duties for the county paper, the Willow Ledger, plus freelance assignments if I could find stories worth paying for. I told my parents I needed space to write and breathe, and be brave without the noise. What I didn't say out loud was the quieter truth. The city had felt like a crowd inside my chest. I wanted fewer faces. I wanted to hear my own thoughts when I walked home at night. The rental house sat on Sycamore Lane, 1 block from Main Street and 3 from the river. It had a crooked porch, a blue door, and a maple tree that leaned like a friendly drunk toward the roof. The key was in a lockbox shaped like a fake rock. The landlord had texted me the code with an apology for not meeting me in person. His mother had a doctor's appointment, he wrote, and then followed it with 3 emoji that didn't help. I hauled my 1 full suitcase and 2 boxes to the porch, set them down, and stood there a moment with my palm on the door, like I could feel the history on the other side. Inside, the air was the stale kind of empty, no dust yet, just vacancy. Pine floors, white walls, tall windows. A small kitchen with a window over the sink and cabinets painted sea glass green. I set the plants on the sill, monstera, pothos, a stubborn basil, then opened every window and watched the curtains breathe. Easing each box open, I made tiny islands of familiarity, a stack of well-thumbed paperbacks on the mantel, a framed photo of my best friend grinning with a waffle the size of a face, my dad's old fountain pen in a ceramic dish by the door. The house echoed when I walked. By evening, it began to sound less like an empty room and more like a place that might keep me. I first saw him while unrolling a rug that refused to lie flat. A shadow crossed the front window, then a low whistle and a thud of something heavy being set down on porch next door. I brushed hair from my face, pushed up the sash, and leaned out. Across my small front yard, separated by a white fence with a missing slat, the house next door sat farther back from the street. It was 2 stories, cedar-sided, with wide steps and a porch swing that had the kind of slow sway that meant it never stopped moving. A man stood at the top of these steps with a toolbox. He wore a grey t-shirt, faded jeans, work boots that looked like they'd lived. He was maybe 28, tall, with forearms that made the toolbox look lighter than it was. When he turned at the sound of my window, the porch light caught the side of his face, clean jaw, a dark scruff, eyes the color of storm water right before rain. "New neighbor," he called, voice warm, not too loud. The sort of voice that didn't need to be. "Emily," I said. "Hi." He set the toolbox on the rail. "Ryan," he replied. "Welcome to the quiet end of town." "Is it that quiet?" He tipped his head as if considering. "Depends who you ask. I like it. Fewer sirens. Better stars. The diner on Main burns the bacon most mornings, but that's a character trait, not a flaw." I smiled before I meant to. He noticed. He didn't push it. "You need anything, holler," he said. "The back door on your place sticks in the heat. Push, don't pull. The porch step creaks, second from the top. And don't leave anything sweet out overnight if you don't want raccoons performing cats in your kitchen." "That specific, huh?" "You'll see." He lifted the toolbox again and disappeared into his house. The screen door side shut, as if relieved to be left alone. I made a note in my head. Ryan, next door. Knows things. Then, because I was a reporter even when I was just a girl in a new town with a notebook full of blank pages, I added a second line, ask which things, and why. That first week, Willow Creek unfolded like a small book with good margins. I found the grocery store, 2 bright lights, excellent peaches, and the coffee shop with a chalkboard menu and barista who drew tiny foxes in the foam if you tipped. I learned the rhythm of Main Street, trucks in the morning, kids on bikes in the afternoon, couples strolling past the storefronts after dinner. The river made a low music you didn't hear until you were very quiet. By my second morning, I'd fallen into a routine, a jog along the bike path, coffee at Fincher Flower, an hour at the library scanning microfilm for old clippings the ledger wanted digitized, then home to stare at my open laptop until words gave up their little ghosts. Ryan and I kept to the neighborly script at first. A wave when he backed his old green pickup out. A nod if we passed on the sidewalk. The second afternoon, while I wrestled the stubborn back door with both hands and my hip braced like a battering ram, his voice floated over the fence. "Push," he said, amused. "Not pull." "I'm trying to make friends with it," I panted. "It prefers boundaries." He came around the fence with a polite lift of his chin, asked if he could, and then showed me the trick, hip to the left, palm snug to the edge, small shove at the deadbolt plate. The door popped like a cork. "I owe you cookies," I said, flushing. "You owe me nothing." Then, with a small catch of a smile, "But if you insist, I'm partial to anything with chocolate." He had a scar near his right thumb that caught my eye when he handed me the keys. It wasn't long, but it was deep enough to have a story. I almost asked. I didn't. That evening I walked to the ledger to meet Marla, the editor who would hired me by phone, and 3 samples. She was 50-ish, short silver hair, smart eyes that saw when you were guessing. The newsroom was a rectangle with 4 desks, 2 of them empty, and one holding a golden retriever that wagged slowly when I entered. "Don't pet him," Marla warned without looking up from her screen. "He'll follow you home, and then I'll lose my copy editor." "What's his name?" "Copy editor." The dog sneezed. I tried not to laugh. Marla finally looked up, took me in, and smiled like she didn't do it often but meant it when she did. "You made it." "I did," I said, and told her I was ready to work. She handed me a stack of ideas the town had been too busy to care about: a zoning meeting, the school district's new lunch vendor, a beloved coach retiring. "Find the edges," she said. "This place looks soft." It isn't, not always. People here keep their secrets tidy. Your job is to notice where they bulge. On the way home, I watched the sky go that sweet pink that makes even strip malls look kind. When I rounded onto Sycamore, someone had set out a box of free books with a Sharpie sign, "Take 2, leave 1 later." I took 3, left a thank you note, and hoped I wouldn't get arrested. Night fell early under the trees. I brewed mint tea, answered my mother's text, "Yes, I'm eating vegetables. No, I haven't joined a cult. And put on playlist that sounded like windows open in summer. I worked until my eyes blurred and letters drifted off the page like dandelion fluff. At midnight, I stood at the sink and looked out at the dark yard. The porch swing next door moved, slow and steady, though no one sat in it. A moth ticked against the screen. I told myself the breeze had hands and went to bed. The first note came 3 days later. I found it in the morning, tucked under the welcome mat, when I stepped out with my running shoes in hand. No envelope. Printer paper, folded twice, plain. On the outside, Emily written in neat block letters. Inside, a single line: "Don't trust the man next door." I stood on the porch with the paper in my fingers, the street empty, the sun clean and early. A dog barked 2 blocks over. A delivery van rattled by. I reread the line until the letters blurred. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe whoever left it thought I'd laugh, that I'd show my new neighbor and he'd make a joke and we'd both roll our eyes. Maybe Willow Creek had an odd sense of humor. I went for my run without looking at Ryan's house. I ran too fast, sweat at my spine, the path along the river a green tunnel that didn't feel as gentle as it had yesterday. When I returned, the note was still on the kitchen table. I slid it into a drawer. Then no, I took it back out and photographed it with my phone. Old habit, new town. At noon, I walked to Fincher Flower, where the chalkboard said "Today Special," honey cake in loopy letters. The barista with the foam foxes, Tess, had a nose ring and an arm tattoo of a fern. "You are new," she said. "Emily," I said, offering a smile that probably looked smaller than I meant. "I'm next to the house with the maple that leans." "Oh, Ryan's block. You know him." She glanced toward the window, as if the street could hear. "Everybody knows everybody," she said, which wasn't an answer. Then, after she poured my coffee, "He minds his own business." Helps with other people's when they ask. Is that common? In town this size? She shrugged. Common's a myth. We make do. On my way out, a little kid crashed into my knees and apologized like he'd hit a church. His dad appeared, breathless, scooped him up, and mouthed sorry over the kid's hair. I thought about how in some places we learned to say sorry before we learned where the corners were. That afternoon, I worked on piece about the river trail and the new lights the town council wanted to install. I called the council president, who was cheerful about safety and less cheerful about budgets. I talked to a jogger who said the path felt safe enough if you ran with your keys in your fist and playlist that let you hear your name. I typed the quotes into a doc and then, on impulse, added my own note to the bottom of the page. Ask around about Ryan Hale. Not for a story. For me. 2 days later, I learned his last name without asking. I was lugging a thrift store dresser out of the hatchback to paint it the sea glass green of my kitchen cabinets. I'd misjudged its weight by optimism alone. Halfway up the walk, my grip failed and the drawer slid out, skidding across the path like a startled crab. I swore, under my breath, twice. Need hand. The voice was behind me, familiar now. I need 6, I groaned. He set his palm to the side of the dresser and lifted like it had offended him. We carried it inside. He set it gently down in the living room. You okay? He asked when I straightened and clutched my lower back like I was twice my age. Define okay. His eyes laughed. No injuries. That's my definition. You should tell the air that. They'd love it. I brushed hair out of my face. Thank you. Anytime. I hesitated. The note in the drawer felt heavy, even when I wasn't touching it. I wanted to ask a half-dozen questions with too little context. Instead, I said, do you work in town? He nodded. Some. Carpentry. Odd jobs. A little bit of everything. He looked like a man who could do little bit of everything and make it seem like he'd been born doing it. And you're a writer. A reporter, I corrected, because it felt more precise. Trying to be. What kind of stories? The kind where I'm still learning what questions to ask. That's the good kind. He moved to the doorway, as if feeling that was enough neighbor for now. If you need help painting, holler, he said, and when he turned to go, I saw another small scar I hadn't noticed, a thin pale line on the back of his left bicep, an old cut that had healed clean. He caught me looking, not unkindly. Glass, he said. I wasn't going to ask. You were. He smiled. You should. Ask the questions. Then why do I feel like if I did, you'd answer the ones you wanted? Maybe, he said. Maybe not. And then he was gone. That night, the back door did its stubborn thing again. I hip-checked it into compliance, laughed at myself alone in the kitchen, and realized with a small start that I felt good, settled, or on my way. I sliced peach and ate it over the sink like kid, juice on my wrist. I texted my best friend, it's pretty here. Also, I may have neighbor feelings. Please mail restraint. She sent back 3 rocket emojis and call me. I didn't, because if I told it out loud, it would grow teeth. Near midnight, I heard a sound on the porch swing next door. A creak, then a footstep. I told myself again that the breeze had hands, that wood had memory. I went to the window anyway. The swing moved. The porch light was off. The shape on the swing, if there was one, was dark enough to be a trick. I watched until my eyes watered. The swing kept time with a rhythm I couldn't place. The second note arrived the next morning, and any hope that the first had been a fluke thinned. It was inside my screen door this time, tucked where only someone who stepped onto the porch could leave it. Plain paper. Folded twice. My name in the Sam neat block letters. Inside. He goes out late to meet the kind of people you don't want knocking on your door. Keep yours locked. My skin went cold. I looked up and down Sycamore Lane. Just lawns, 2 kids on scooters arguing about rules, a woman in a visor cutting roses and humming at a key just under her breath. I slid the note into the Sam drawer as the first. I took another photo with my phone. Then I did what you do when fear moves in. I made tea I didn't want, cleaned a counter that wasn't dirty, and organized the junk drawer like order could outvote dread. In the afternoon, I walked to the library to return the microfilm reels and see if the librarian, Mrs. Dale, thin and sweet-faced, a braid like a rope over one shoulder, knew the kind of gossip that wore a cardigan. "Hale," she repeated when I asked if she'd heard the name, trying to sound like a rookie who wanted to know neighbors and not like someone who collected details for a living. "Fine boy," she said, and then, with a small look at my face, added, "Quite. Keeps to himself. Helped us build the new bookshelves in children's last spring. Strong as an ox. Polite. Does he have family here? Came alone a few years back," she said. "Rented from Mrs. Mendage, and then bought that house next to yours when her sister moved to Tucson. He fixed it up faster than most people could say, permit. Friends." She considered. "People like him," she said. "People hire him. That's not the Sam thing, but it'll do." On my way out, I passed a bulletin board with flyers: yoga by the river, church rummage sale, lost cat named Pickle with a streak of white on his ear, and a posted notice for town hall meeting about break-ins last winter, tools stolen from garages, bikes from porches. The date was 6 months ago. I wrote break-ins in my notebook with a small star next to it. That night, I watched his house without meaning to. The porch light clicked on at 8, off at 10. The swing moved. At 11, his truck started, a low rumble, and backed into the street without its headlights for the first few feet, then clicked them on and rolled toward town. I listened to the engine fade, and told myself he could be going anywhere for reasons that didn't need my imagination. Waffle House existed. Sickness did. Friends called at odd hours with dumb emergencies. I fell asleep on the couch with the lamp on. When I woke at 2, the house was bright in a way that felt wrong. I went to the window. Headlights washed the front yard in a bleach of white. The truck idled in Ryan's driveway, nose toward the street, tailgate down. He was in the bed of the truck, alone, head bent. He lifted what looked like a heavy case and carried it into the house with a carefulness that read as practice. He moved like a person who never dropped anything. When he shut the door, the porch light flared and then went dark. My mouth was dry. I didn't know what I wanted to know. I went back to bed and dreamed of doors that wouldn't latch, of notes on every stair. In the morning, I told myself to mind my life. I wrote the Riverlight story and sent it to Marla. I pitched the break-ins as a follow-up. What changed, what didn't, who got their bikes back, who put better locks on their sheds. She said yes in a text that also asked if I liked dog-sitting. I said yes to both. At noon, I walked to Main Street to photograph the last day of the summer farmers market for a sidebar. People bought tomatoes you could smell from a table away. A musician in a straw had played songs that felt like summers I hadn't lived. I interviewed a woman selling pies and an 8th grader selling handmade lures with names like Junebug and Mean Minnow. When I finished, I turned and nearly walked straight into Ryan. He steadied me with a hand at my elbow, gentle. "Whoa," he said, and there was laughter in it. "What would the Junebug do to you?" "Mean Minnow," I said, recovering. It gave me side-eye. He was clean-shaven today, like he'd remembered how it felt to be watched. He bought a bag of peaches, handed me one without asking if I wanted it. "You should try the honey cake," he said. "Tess charges too much, but she puts the extra into the frosting." "I thought you didn't push," I said. "Boundaries and all." "That was your door," he said. "People are different. I've noticed." We walked the aisle between flowers and jars. He pointed out which stalls would still be here in October and which vanished when school started. He moved like he belonged, which maybe he did, which maybe was its own kind of warning. When a police cruiser rolled slow past Main to the church lot, he didn't look up. I watched him not look and filed the detail where I kept the others. On the way back to Sycamore, we split the peach, him tearing it clean in half with a twist, me ruining mine with juice, and he told me the names of the trees on our street like they were neighbors too. At my walkway, we stopped. He looked at my house like a man measuring a door for hinges. "You settling in okay?" he asked. "I think so." You sleep with that back door locked? He asked, like a gentle afterthought. Yes, I said, and then, because the second note throbbed at my temples, added, do you go out late lot? He studied my face. He didn't smile. He didn't frown either. Sometimes, he said. Work I didn't finish. Things I didn't want to do when it was too hot to breathe. Things like what? He could have lied. He didn't. Sometimes people ask me to fix what they don't want other people to see. It's easier to do that when nobody's watching. Is that legal? Mostly, he said, and I couldn't tell if the word was a joke. Don't look like that, he added, softer. You are safe here. I didn't say I wasn't. You didn't have to. He left me on the path, peaches dripping on my wrist, and walked to his porch without looking back. The swing moved. I breathed and didn't. I washed my hands at the sink and watched the water run pink with sweetness. The third note came at dusk. I heard the screen door tap. Not a knock. A presence. I was at the stove, talking to water like it needed encouragement to boil, and the sound made the hairs lift on my arms. I stepped onto the porch into the gold that made the world look kinder than it meant to be. The paper lay face down on the mat. I flipped it with my toe, then picked it up. You want to know who took the bikes last winter? Ask him. You want to keep your windows unbroken? Keep this to yourself. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't a neighborly warning. It was something else. A lever, a test. A hand in the small of my back pushing me where I had already been leaning. I sat on the top step with the note in my fist and watched the light fall out of the trees. Across the fence, Ryan's porch was quiet. A moth bobbed. Somewhere, a dog barked once like punctuation. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Marla, asking for a photo to pair with the Riverlight story and a sentence for the teaser. I typed, new lights, old river, Sam Town. Are we safer when we can see, or when we believe we are? I stared at it too long before I sent it. At 9, I put on sneakers and told myself I was going for a walk to see the river at night. I left my porch light on and locked the door. As I reached the end of the path, a shadow separated from the maple trunk next door. Heading out? Ryan asked, not surprised. Couldn't sleep. The river's good for that, he said. He fell into step beside me without asking. We walked in silence past houses that wore their evening faces, TV glow on ceilings, laughter through screen doors, a clink of dishes washed by hand. At the end of Sycamore, the path dipped toward the water. Fireflies stitched the air. The river had the dark, easy voice of a thing that's been practicing forever. We stopped on the footbridge, where kids chalked initials in summer and shoved each other in spring. He leaned on the rail and watched the current, like a man counting the ways it didn't stop. You can ask, he said after a minute. Whatever it is. You've been chewing on it all day. I didn't answer right away. A heron slid downstream, pretending it wasn't real. Finally, I said, were you here last winter, when the break-ins happened? Yes. Did you see anything? Yes. What? People who wanted what wasn't theirs. Did you stop them? He turned his head, met my eyes. Sometimes. Sometimes not. The breeze lifted my hair. Why would someone warn me about you? Because they want to make me into a story that fits in a single sentence. What's the longer version? He held my gaze, and for a breath I forgot what the question was. I make things, he said. I fix them. And I know how easy it is for something that isn't broken to look broken if you push it hard enough. That's not comforting. It wasn't meant to be. It was meant to be true. We stood until the mosquitoes found us. On the way back, he didn't touch me. He didn't try to. But something in the space between us felt charged in a way that made my mouth dry. At my walkway, he paused. Lock your doors, he said, and there was no flirt in it. If anyone messes with you, call me first. Then call the police. I should reverse those. Sometimes calling the police is how you tell a story to people who weren't there, he said. Sometimes you need a person who will be. I watched him cross to his porch, a dark shape against the lighter dark. I went inside and locked both locks, and the third one I'd installed myself, because sometimes rituals looked a lot like religion. At midnight, a sound woke me, light, like a fingernail on glass. Not the back door. The front window. I moved careful, heartbeat loud enough to have its own footsteps. I peeled the curtain an inch. The porch swing moved again. A shadow sat where shadows sit when they've decided they belong. On my mat, there was a square of something pale that wasn't there before. I flicked on the porch light. The swing stilled. The shadow wasn't there. I opened the door. On the mat lay a small package wrapped in brown paper and twine, the kind a butcher might use for meat. It was warm from the air. No address, no sender. My name, again, neat block letters. I brought it inside and set it on the table. I listened. The house listened back. I untied the twine. Inside, wrapped in a square of blue cloth, lay an old sledge deadbolt, paint flecks still stuck to its face, like someone had pried it from a door that had resisted. Under it, folded once, a note. This kept a girl safe until it didn't. Ask him where he found it. I stared at the metal, heavy in its quiet. I ran my thumb along the edge and felt the grit of the paint, the bar where a screwdriver had slipped. I pictured a door and a girl and a night like this one, and a story I didn't know yet. Somewhere outside, a truck started. I didn't need to look to know whose. Through the window, I watched Ryan's taillights spill down Sycamore and turn toward town. He drove the way some people leave, like there's a map you can only see when the dark gives it back to you. I sat at my table with a deadbolt and the version of myself who believed in easy stories. The house didn't echo anymore. It held my breath and gave it back. I slid the old lock into a drawer and wrote 5 questions on page, and then crossed 3 of them out because my hands wouldn't hold still. I told myself I'd sleep and ask in the morning. I told myself morning made things smaller. I told myself I was good at questions and careful with answers and brave with the parts that mattered. In the dark, the porch swing moved until it didn't. And somewhere between that and dawn, I understood 2 things at once. I was falling for the man next door, and someone else in Willow Creek had decided I should be warned before I did. When sleep finally found me, it did not bring dreams, only the steady tick of a house that had begun to know my name. The mornings in Willow Creek had a way of pretending nothing bad could live there. Sunlight spilled like honey across Sycamore Lane, children rode their bikes to school, and neighbors clipped roses as if the world was only made of petals. But I carried the deadbolt in my desk drawer, heavy and ugly, wrapped in its square of blue cloth, and the note stuck beside it. Each one whispered that the picture wasn't as simple as the pretty streets and soft air. Ryan knocked on my door that afternoon. 3 quick taps, the kind that sounded casual but carried weight. Emily. I hesitated before opening. He stood there in a clean black t-shirt, his hair still damp, a bag of groceries in his arm. Thought you might need these, he said. You've been writing too much to remember food. I should have laughed. I should have said no. Instead, I stepped aside. Inside, he set the bag on the counter. Bread, eggs, coffee beans, chocolate. He looked at me like he could read my hesitation in the air. You've been quiet, he said. I've been working. Working on trusting me. His mouth curved faintly, but his eyes didn't. The silence between us was taut. Then I said, "Where do you go at night?" He blinked, slowly, like a man deciding whether to answer. Jobs. Sometimes places that need work after hours. Sometimes, other things. And the bruises. He glanced at his knuckles, faint marks still there. Wood's rough. Life's rougher. It should have made me turn away. But instead, the pull in my chest grew stronger. Something about him was danger dressed as safety, and I was old enough to know the difference, but still young enough to ignore it. That night, I let him in again. It began with coffee on my porch, and turned into a kiss that burned through every warning in my head. His mouth was warm, his hands rough, his touch both careful and hungry. The porch swing creaked under our weight, and for a moment the world narrowed to the space between his lips and mine. By the time dawn stretched across Sycamore Lane, Ryan and I had crossed the line we both pretended not to see. His shirt was on the floor, my hair tangled, the air thick with a kind of electricity I couldn't turn off. I told myself it was just a night. But it wasn't. Over the next days, secrecy became its own intoxication. He'd stop by under the excuse of checking my back door, fixing creak in the floorboard, or dropping off peaches. We whispered on my porch after midnight, kissed in the dark corners of my living room, touched like we were both holding fire. Every moment was risk, and every risk was fuel. But the notes didn't stop. The next one was left under my windshield wiper when I came back from the ledger. It read, "You think you know him. You don't. Look deeper. I showed it to Ryan, testing him. He only frowned, jaw tight. Someone doesn't want you near me. They're playing you. Or warning me, I countered. Do you believe them more than me? I didn't answer. That night, curiosity became obsession. I dug into old newspaper archives at the library, scrolling through crime reports from nearby cities. Most were petty thefts, small arrests, bar fights. But then I found it. 5 years ago, in a city to our south, a man named Ryan Hale had been questioned, though never charged, in connection with an assault case. The victim never pressed charges. The file had gone cold. My blood ran cold too. I printed the article and tucked it into my notebook, unsure what scared me more, that it was him, or that it wasn't. When I got home, Ryan was on my porch, waiting. His eyes searched my face, then the bag at my side. "What did you find?" I froze. "What makes you think I found anything?" "Because I know that look," he said, stepping closer. Curiosity dressed as fear. I swallowed. "Was it you? The case in Southbridge?" His jaw worked. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then, "I've been places I shouldn't have been. Done things I'm not proud of. But I'm not the monster they want you to believe." "Then why the photos?" I snapped. "Why do you have pictures of me? On your dresser? In your garage?" His face didn't change. That scared me more than anger would have. "I told you," he said softly. "I needed to be sure you were safe. Before you even knew me." "Safe from who?" He leaned closer, his voice almost a whisper. "Safe from the people who follow me. The people who don't forget." I wanted to believe him. God help me, part of me still did. But another part, the reporter part, couldn't ignore the weight of the notes, the article, the photographs. When he left that night, the porch swing rocked long after he was gone. I went into his garage the next evening. He hadn't locked it, or maybe I was too good at finding the trick. Inside, the air smelled of oil and old wood. Tools lined the walls in neat rows. On the far table sat a stack of photographs, bound with twine. My hands trembled as I untied it. Every picture was of me. On my balcony. Jogging by the river. Carrying groceries. Sleeping. The last one made me drop the stack. My body curled under the quilt, hair across my face, the photo taken from inside my own house. I stumbled back, my throat tight with panic. The garage seemed to press in, every shadow a secret I wasn't supposed to know. Behind me, the floor creaked. "Emily," Ryan's voice said quietly. "You weren't supposed to see that." The sound of his voice in the garage froze me harder than the photos ever could. My breath caught, my pulse thudded in my ears. I turned, slowly, and there he was, Ryan, framed in the half-light of the doorway, the night air behind him carrying a chill that didn't belong to summer. His eyes weren't wild. They weren't furious. That was the worst part. They were calm, steady, the eyes of a man who had planned this moment long before I stumbled into it. "You weren't supposed to see that," he repeated, softer this time, almost regretful. I forced my voice steady. "How long?" He stepped further inside, closing the door with a quiet click that sounded like a lock falling into place. "Since the day you moved in. Maybe before." The room tilted. "Before? Ryan, what do you mean before?" He leaned against the workbench, arms crossed, his shadow stretching across the floor like a second man. "I knew you'd end up here. Willow Creek isn't a place people just stumble into. It's a place people come when they're running from something, or when they're being guided. Guided? My voice cracked. I saw your work at the paper in Southbridge. His mouth twitched in something close to a smile. The article about the housing project scandal. You dug deep. Too deep. The Sam people who tried to bury me hated that story, Chew. And when I saw your name, he shrugged, almost casual. I knew you'd be safer near me. I shook my head, clutching the table to keep upright. That's not protection. That's obsession. He didn't flinch. Maybe there isn't a difference anymore. The garage was too small, too quiet. The photos scattered at my feet like a shattered mirror reflecting all the nights I'd felt watched. My throat tightened. And the notes. The threats. Was that you too? For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Pride. Almost. Some. Yes. Not all. The first two were mine. I needed you to lean closer, to trust me, to come to me instead of pushing me away. But the last ones, his jaw flexed. There are still people looking for me, Emily. People who would rather see me gone than alive. They've been circling again. My skin prickled. So you scared me half to death, just so I'd cling to you. I saved you, he said firmly, stepping closer. His hand twitched like he wanted to reach for mine. If I hadn't been here, you'd already be a story in the back of the ledger. Another girl who left her door unlocked. My voice rose, sharp. No, Ryan. You don't get to decide what my story is. You don't get to write it for me. For a heartbeat, silence. Then his expression hardened, the softness gone. You don't understand, Emily. I've lost before. I won't lose again. The words sent a cold wave through me. I edged backward, until my spine pressed against the shelves. My hand brushed a hammer lying there. My fingers curled around it before I even knew what I was doing. He noticed. His gaze dropped, then lifted. For the first time, a flicker of sorrow crossed his face. I don't want to hurt you. Then let me leave. I can't. His voice cracked on the word. If you leave, they'll find you. They'll use you to get to me. And if they don't, you'll never understand why I did what I did. You'll only think I'm a monster. I lifted the hammer between us, my arm trembling. Then maybe that's what you are. The tension snapped. He lunged, not with violence, but desperation, trying to grab my wrist, to stop me from swinging. I twisted away, the hammer clattering to the floor. His hand caught my arm, firm, unyielding. Emily, listen, he shouted, his mask cracking. Everything I've done was to keep you close, to keep you safe. I can't lose you, Chew. The last word broke something in me. Tu. Who else? Ryan. Who else did you lose? His grip faltered. His voice dropped, raw. Her name was Claire. She trusted me. I failed her. She's dead because I wasn't watching close enough. I swore I'd never let it happen again. I stared at him, horror creeping over me. Claire. A girl I'd read about once, buried in an old police blotter, missing, presumed dead. No one ever charged. No one ever found. My voice trembled. And what did you do to her? His eyes darkened. I tried to save her. He shook his head, whispering now. But love and protection, they blur, Emily. They blur until you don't know where one ends and the other begins. The garage door rattled suddenly. A voice outside, sharp, commanding. Police! Open up! My heart leapt. The notes. The articles. Someone else must have noticed. Someone had finally called. Ryan's head snapped toward the sound. His grip loosened. I shoved him back with all the strength I had, scrambled toward the door. He didn't chase me. Not at first. He just stood there, eyes hollow, watching as if memorizing me. Then, as the door burst open and officers surged inside, he whispered, so low I almost didn't hear. You'll see I was right. They'll never love you like I did. The next moments blurred, hands pulling me outside, questions shouted, neighbors staring from porches, the hum of radios. Ryan on the ground, cuffed, his face still calm even as they read him his rights. I stood on the street barefoot, my pulse ragged, watching the man I'd kissed, the man I'd feared, the man who claimed to love me, being led away. The garage light spilled onto the pavement, illuminating the photos still scattered inside. Evidence, they called it. Memories, I thought. Warnings. Weeks later, after statements and court hearings and restless nights, I left Willow Creek. I packed my plants, my books, these scars no one could see, and drove away from the river that whispered too many secrets. I didn't look back. But sometimes, even now, when the night is too quiet, I still hear his voice. Love and protection blur until you don't know where one ends and the other begins. And I wonder if I'll ever trust either again.